thank you for having me, because originally Julio was asking people to sign up for presentations, and I put my hand up straight away, not even knowing what actually was being asked of me. But eventually he mentioned that he was looking for people to kind of share more about their background and give people some insight into them. So I was hoping to give you some insight into one of the most common questions that I get asked, which is, I'm an electrical engineer and mathematician, and normally what comes from that at the International Development Design Summit is, how did you get here at IDDS then? And hopefully along the way you'll learn a bit more about me and my passions, and perhaps there'll be some ways that you think of that we can help each other out. So I grew up in Australia. I graduated high school a few years earlier than I was supposed to, and so when the decision came for me to choose what I would do at university, I didn't have as much of an idea as perhaps other people did, but I knew that I loved maths. So that was what I chose, and then since I had an extra few years up my sleeve, I decided to do a double degree, and so the question was IT or business or engineering. So I chose engineering. The default is electrical, and it turned out to be something that I really, really loved. And the projects that I was doing through this time were fascinating to me, and I'm very lucky that I kind of stumbled into this. But around third year, I started wondering why it was that my friend in medical engineering, I was so much more attracted to her projects. Even though I loved what I was studying, what she was doing, I was very jealous of her, because everything that she worked on had immediate and visible applications to help people. And I guess then I was almost fortunate again that I finished school at having just turned 15, because if I had have been age appropriate, then perhaps I would have already realized that I wanted to help people, and I wouldn't have chosen maths. And I might have chosen something perhaps more traditional if you know that you want to help people, like maybe development or nursing or teaching or social work. But you know, I was young, I chose maths, and then I ended up realizing eventually though that that even electrical engineers could help people, and this happened for me in my final year. If you may push the button, because I was working on a brain-controlled car for my thesis, and what attracted me to this was just that it sounded pretty awesome. And you know, like I knew that I wanted to help people, but I didn't know if it was possible. So I chose this, and it sounded pretty cool. And I was reading about these brain-computer interfaces, and in one of the research papers they mentioned that one of the primary drivers and incentives for this brain-computer interface research is for people who are completely paralyzed and fully mentally alert but unable to communicate. But if you use electrodes and signal processing and control systems, then you can give them a voice again and completely change their life. But this is all electrical engineering. And it was then that I realized that I didn't have to be jealous of my friend in medical engineering anymore. Perhaps I had to work a bit harder to find it, but I knew then that there were applications for me to do what I love doing and still help people. So people were asking me then, when I was in my final year, like, what will you do next year, what will you do next year? And I had no idea what to tell them, because, I mean, especially when you're talking to engineers, I suppose, the answer of, I just want to help people, it doesn't go down so well. But again, I got lucky, and I found something that perhaps I would describe as my dream job. If you could. So I was working on a project at the University of Melbourne. We were developing a low-tech stethoscope to plug into healthcare workers' phones in Mozambique so that they could diagnose pneumonia in children. But what attracted me was that part, but that I could just be paid to play with electronics all day. And so when you combine these two things, honestly, I don't know how I found it, or maybe it found me, but the point is that I was very lucky to have found it, because it was just kind of popped up. It wasn't something that my networks brought me or anything. I had to look for it, but I knew that if I kept looking, then I would eventually find something because of my experience with my thesis. Sorry, I'm just looking. So I did know that I also loved studying, and at the same time, I had applied to a few different master's programs, and one of the ones that I got accepted to, if you can, I think, push the button. Yeah, was an Erasmus Mundus European Masters of Computer Vision and Robotics. And this doesn't quite line up with what I was doing. I had the perfect job, right? But when the European Commission offers you a full scholarship to study what you would love in France, Spain, Scotland, and some other country, then I felt silly to turn it down. So now I'm halfway through that, and I was thinking of what I should do in my time off, and I knew that when I was at the University of Melbourne working on the project with the phones, I, as an electrical engineer, could design something that made perfect sense, but no sense at the same time. And of course this comes to no surprise to the people in this room now, but for me it was a big shock that we would approach our supervisor who had 15 years of experience in Mozambique as a healthcare worker, and we'd be like, oh, we did what you asked. And he's like, oh, that's nice, but you can't approach a sick child with a stethoscope because they'll cry. And then we were looking for the respiratory rate, and all bets were off, they'll throw the device in the bin. So then the extra innovation has to go into it, where you have to find non-conventional ways for this to work so that you don't disrupt the child. And of course, this was something that he had insight to that I didn't. So I needed this insight I saw so that I could become a better engineer, I think. And I started Googling the different volunteer work in Africa. And since my experience with the past few projects that I've mentioned, I know now to just keep looking until I know for sure, because I had never heard of the brain control car, and I had never heard of the work at the University of Melbourne, and I had never heard about this master's, but I was just searching for them, and when I read about them, I knew straight away that that was what I wanted to do. And so now I kind of know that I'm not very good at making decisions, but I can tell now when my decision has been made. And so on about the 15th page of Google, IDDS came up. And that's how I got here. But of course, to stumble upon these things so many times in a row, I recognize that this is a massive fluke for me. And I'm very fortunate to be here now and to be so happy to have had these accidents, I suppose. But I recognize then that if from the very beginning, if 2 pages in the careers book had been stuck together, I may have never found electrical engineering. And if I didn't do that thesis, I don't know what my career would have looked like. And if I didn't do that project at the University of Melbourne, would I have realized that I need to come to Africa? And like all of these things that shouldn't have been so coincidental. I don't know, maybe I'm the only person here that found out about IDDS from Google. But my point is that it's not enough for me to have had these experiences for myself, because it could have been very easy for me to miss out on them. And so now I dedicate a lot of my time to, I suppose, telling my story to students at schools, especially girls, because I think that when people think about wanting a career where they can help people, maybe electrical engineering isn't the first thing that comes to mind. But that doesn't mean that it should be disregarded like perhaps some people do. And so now, I suppose, I try to get that out, and I train people to work with me so that we can reach as many young people as possible, so that they can be as fortunate as I have been to discover what is their passion and how they can combine it to help people. So thank you for having me here, and like giving me so many stories to now use in my presentations to inspire everyone else, and I hope that together we can change the world.
Just a simple one. What made you go to the 15th page?
I'd been to every other page, and when I read about the project descriptions, they all sounded fantastic, and I would have no problem doing those things. But I know now to wait for the moment when my decision has been made straight away. That's what I found on the 15th